Okay, we'll bring the Environment, Sustainability, and Committee meeting to order. Is there any declarations or conflict of interest? Seeing none?
No?
Okay. Can we have approval of the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, moved by Councilor Duran, second by Councilor McKinnon. Can we have approval of the minutes from May 27th, 2024?
Yeah.
Moved by Councilor Duran, second by Councilor McKinnon. Any business arising from the minutes?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll move into reports, and I'm going to move the agenda around a little bit. I know it's a fairly full agenda. So I wonder if we can do the Natural Asset Management Roadmap first. Alistair, you want to take that, buddy? I will say, just for the record, this meeting is Monday, June the 24th, 12 o'clock. Go ahead, Alistair.
So this report here is just an update on a process we went through earlier in the spring. We participated in a kind of workshop, open program that was offered by the Natural Assets Initiative. They're a nonprofit group that works a lot with natural assets and municipalities, trying to encourage governments to incorporate natural assets into their asset management planning. So with some funding from the Intact public entities, they were able to offer a road mapping program for municipalities to participate in, which allows us to create a high-level roadmap plan to help guide us in developing natural asset management practices. So with I guess as a broad definition, natural assets include things like forests, wetlands, lakes, rivers, more natural areas, whereas things like swales or rain gardens, things like that, wouldn't necessarily be considered natural assets. It's more focused on those fully natural spaces. So throughout this process, we worked with someone with the Natural Asset Initiative, as well as across the departmental team. So we had members from Parks and Rec, Public Works, some of the GIS staff, et cetera, come together to go through a worksheet where we looked at 6 discipline areas or competency areas that FCM uses more for their asset management practices. It's people in governments, people in leadership, data and information, et cetera. I won't read them all out. But for each of those sections, we looked at where we currently are with natural asset management, and just due to the nature of it overlapping with regular engineered asset management, there was a lot of conversation around where we are with that as well. And out of those, we came up with some strategies and recommended actions, as well as associated priorities from high to low, as well as what that timing might be, whether they're short-term actions or longer-term actions. And I've highlighted some of them in the report just to give an example of what some of those might be. One of them was to present this roadmap to our committee. We want to develop a asset management policy that does include natural assets. So when we do move forward with asset management, developing more formal plans and strategies, we want to make sure natural assets are in there from the start. What's interesting and what kind of brought this program into fruition from the NAI was that Ontario is now requiring asset management plans to be approved on the provincial level, and they do require natural assets to be assessed within those plans. So there's other jurisdictions within Canada that are now requiring natural asset management to be included within asset management plans. So one of the other recommendations was to include wording around natural assets within our official plan and climate action plan, which should be included, to create a formal asset management committee or working group. There was a lot of interest, as sometimes our different departments can be siloed, so we heard from different departments that there was some interest in forming more of a working group where all the departments can have a representative come together to discuss that. And that wouldn't be headed by our department. It would likely be more of a asset management-led initiative. We discussed updating our natural assets inventory, and it hoping to move forward with that in the coming months to create a more up-to-date, now that we have some more tree canopy data, some more up-to-date land cover classification data from the province. And then from there, we want to create priority areas, priority assets, and then move on to some high-level condition assessments, determining the level of services those assets are providing, whether it be stormwater management, cooling of the urban heat effects, air quality, water quality improvement, things like that. We then develop some targets for managing and enhancing those priority areas. And then there's lots of different methods where we can move on to a high-level valuation of services to determine what value those services, whether it be from like water, cooling, carbon sequestration, what the, say, replacement costs would be if we wanted to do something that was more engineered, or there's several different methods we won't get into. There's also some discussion around updating policies to support natural asset management. There's been a lot of discussion around requirements within the zoning and development bylaw, whether that be the park allocation, requirements for new subdivisions or developments to have trees planted. Just looking at different ways we can encourage the increasing tree canopy cover, the preservation of wetlands, things like that. And then there's quite a few around increasing education of staff and counselors around natural assets, creating communications and engagement plans for other stakeholders. As we know, the city owns only a certain amount of parcels within the city, and a lot of assets that we might determine to be a priority, we might not necessarily own. So we want to look at how we're engaging those stakeholders or landowners, and then continue to work on new programs, develop new partnerships like this with Natural Asset Initiative. And attached to the report is more of the full recommended actions in each of those competency areas.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Duran, any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
So Alistair, the ponds, are they part of the natural, your asset inventory,
The ponds, yeah, so the
watersheds?
watersheds, especially the streams and ponds, would be part of our natural assets. We would, for the streams, we would maybe look more at the riparian area or the buffer zone
Right,
around
yeah,
those to make sure those are healthy. And within my other report, we do have some information on that, where they currently are.
Okay. Okay. I noticed in here under the watersheds, there's a lot of watersheds that don't belong to the city of Charlottetown. Do we monitor them? Do we work with the watersheds to do the water quality testing?
Yes, so we work closely with the two watershed groups that do work within Charlottetown, as well as some that do work outside. We have Ellens Creek and Wrights Creek. Both of their areas fall within the city, so we work quite closely with them. They're helping us out a lot with some tree planting, different programs that our urban forestry team are responsible for. We also have Winter River that is out more in our wellfield sites, so we also do a lot of work with them relating more to wellfield management. And then there's the Cornwall area that does come into a bit of the city. The watershed boundaries, the watershed group boundaries, they don't line up very well with where the municipal boundaries are, but we try our best to work with them as much as we can and where it makes sense.
No, it's good to see, because a lot of times they're neglected, and the watershed group can use as much help as they can get. But yeah, it'd be nice to see a lot of these watersheds come back into a healthy state. So I can speak for Andrews Pond. That got in Oxic a number of years ago, and it's in pretty good shape now. It's been dredged out a few times, and there's a lot of wildlife coming back, and see it's healthy, but it does take some work. So good job. No questions? We're good? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alistair, we might as well go with you to on the watershed report cards. You want to talk on that? Jumps right into it.
Yeah, sure. So the watershed report cards are coming out of some discussions we had on about how we're presenting some of the data we're collecting through different means. One of the main programs that we have been monitoring the watershed health through is the Ecological Pond Study. So it's an ongoing partnership with both of the Ellens Creek, Wrights Creek, as well as the Holland College Environmental Applied Science Technology Program. So usually it's summer staff that work with both the college as well as the watershed groups. They go out and do weekly, monthly monitoring for different water quality parameters. They also monitor for macroinvertebrate life within the ponds. And then from that, they create annual reports, which have proved to be, quite a bit lengthy. We did a 5-year report that had a lot of statistics and analysis, but for the average person just curious about where the watershed health is, it's a bit much to digest. So we were interested in creating more of a report that would be shorter, easier to just pick up and read with more visuals, as well as highlighting some of the other work that was done, especially through the post-Fiona urban forestry restoration strategy. So we see a lot of canopy scoring in there as well. And then we also wanted to highlight the work that was done by the two watershed groups. And of course, we want to encourage people to get involved as much as they can. So I'll just kind of go through some of the findings of those reports. Again, they're both attached there. From the Water Quality Index, we collect a lot of different water quality information, from temperature, from pH, to metals, to fecal coliforms, all these different information. They're great on their own, but to get a more of a one number, there's some maths that are done in an index where it gives us a score using, I think it's 9 different parameters, a score between 0 and 100 to give us a general idea of where the pond is water quality wise. And of the 11 ponds that were studied in 2023, we had 10 that scored moderate and 1 pond that scored good. Looking at the kind of biotic index, so the macroinvertebrate life, there's some populations that are very tolerant to pollution. So there'd be more insects that have a stage of their life that's under the water. Some can withstand high levels of pollution, some can't. So if we see populations that are more or less tolerant to pollution, that means the pond's in a better state, as otherwise these species wouldn't be able to be there. And again, from that, more math is done to determine a score. And the highlight is 8 of our ponds scored fair and 2 fairly poor. The canopy cover, we had one Charlottetown watershed, which is more of the downtown area, which had 15% canopy cover, Wrights Creek around 16, North River a bit above 18%, and then Riverside is the highest with 20.2%. And we also did a look around the buffer zones, the riparian area, so 30 meters of either side, which is considered to be, a good above what the province requires for protection, but what research suggests is a healthier buffer zone. So for the 30-meter buffer zone, there are some maps of what percentage canopy cover those areas have. And within the Fiona strategy, we have goals to restore all of those riparian areas to about 45% or more canopy cover. And then we can look and see currently there's, especially in Wrights Creek and sections of Ellens Creek, there are quite a few areas that are quite low in canopy cover, and they are kind of being prioritized now with some plantings. And even this year, there's been quite a lot done in Wrights Creek and some in Ellens Creek as well, and some joint initiatives with the city and watershed groups. But some highlights from 2023, more than 2,200 trees and shrubs were planted by our watershed groups. They've been doing a lot of focus on invasive species removal, especially glossy buckthorn. They've also been testing out different methods to see if there over time is one that works better than the other. And then there's lots of events that goes on, like the annual fishing derby that takes place at Andrews Pond, as well as getting lots of different school groups and other groups out to help out with these initiatives. So I'll kind of leave it at that as a very high-level look at where we are. We have also made these available on our website, so anyone can view them now, and we'll encourage the watershed groups to share them with their volunteers and their email lists as well to help share the results and what's being done to help enhance these areas.
Any questions? Councillor Duran?
No, thank you, Terry. That's great information. Thank you.
Councillor McKinnon? You're good? Just a couple. So Alistair, the 30-meter buffer zone, would you guys recommend that to be larger than the 30-meter?
Sorry, pardon?
Would there be a recommendation, the 30-meter buffer zone that's in place now, would you be recommending that buffer zone should be bigger?
So right now, it's the province requires like a 15-meter buffer zone that has a protected from any development, and any work within that area requires permits. The 30 meters is obviously double that and better for some of the ecological services that those areas provide, like filtration, shading the water to cool the streams, which is good for fish health, as well as slowing down any other pollution or the flow of water coming into those areas. So the 30 meters is more of what might be considered a best practice. Obviously, larger than that would have more benefits, but we do recognize we're an urban area, and there's sometimes having a larger buffer zone poses challenges with.
And I ask that because with the government, with PI Housing, with the new subdivision they want to put in up in Hillsborough Park, we asked government for a 100-meter buffer zone, which they granted. And mostly because the lay of the land, the water would run right towards the stream, Wrights Creek. So anyway, but it's 30 meters. I know it's double what they ask. I sometimes wonder if 15 is adequate, but anyway, in your opinion, 30 is working for most areas.
Yeah, 30 meters seems to be, it would be ideal. More would even be better, but we recognize we're a smaller city and there's a need for development.
So on your canopy cover, when you give us these numbers, is this numbers that were accumulated before Fiona, or is this after Fiona?
So this is the post-Fiona numbers. It's coming from the report that would have been presented to this committee either at the last meeting or the meeting before. So it's just the additional work they did to look more at what those numbers are per watershed and buffer zone.
So can I take from that the canopy is probably worse than what was presented here?
So I believe the drop was from around 21% to 17 point something overall for 17.6 for the entire city. So there was around 3% or so drop. I would have to look into see what those were per watershed. But of course, we lost a lot of trees, so it's not surprising that they probably did go down by quite a bit.
Okay. I'm just going to jump here, Jessica, because we've applied for the 2 billion tree fund, right? And we've been approved for funding for trees?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 2 billion trees funding is going through a number of different channels. And so we're currently working on one arm of that through the province. So they're giving money to the province, and the province is giving money to us. FCM have just announced 2 billion trees funding through them. Trans-Canada Trails have 2 billion trees programs. So there's a wide assortment of agencies delivering 2 billion trees programs. We're tapping into the one through the province. Simon's currently looking into applying to the one through FCM, which is due in another few weeks, your expression of interest.
Yeah, I think their deadline was July 12th.
Yeah, something like that.
They were advertising that up to FCM.
Yep.
Okay, he's looking into that. So there's other criteria. I think they cover 60% of the cost, and there's other criteria. If you meet it, it'll continue to give another 10%.
Yeah.
So Simon's looking after that.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Simon and I met with FCM about a week ago just to drill down what the best plan was, because we want to do different things and different programs are better targeted at different groups because they fund different things. So we met with FCM and looked at different options and then nailed down which one's going to be the best proposal to put forward, and Simon's working on that now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. And Alistair, just on these numbers on the water quality, it's 54.2, for example, for Dead Man's Pond, and 56 for Governor's Pond. These are considered moderate. I noticed they go up to 70. There's one that was, I thought I read one that was good. Hermitage Pond over by the rural there, 73, which was good. So everything else is moderate. Which tells me that's just 50-50. It's kind of moderate shape. Is that the right way to interpret this?
Yeah, I guess it would be like the scores between like moderate and good are not arbitrary, but there's a range of what's considered from the group that developed the water quality index, what they had labeled as good or moderate. Using the number as a range between 0 and 100, that's going to tell you where it lies, as without going into the more moderate good score. Like obviously we want to get our ponds that increase that water quality index score as high as possible. And then there's going to be specific parameters like Dead Man's Pond, the dissolved oxygen is quite low, so that affects the score and brings it down. So within the more detailed reporting and analysis, we do look at like what those individual parameters, how they're affecting those scores. The water quality index score is just a good one to look at as an overall quick idea of what the ecological or aquatic health might look like in that pond.
Okay. So is there ongoing efforts to try and improve all these ponds?
Yeah, so there's work around, especially with tree planting in the buffer zone, that's going to help out a lot with some of those parameters. It's going to prevent silt and other contaminants from getting in the water. It's going to cool the water, which relates to a number of different parameters. So that's a big one that's done. It's very, kind of depends on the area. There's some focus with the watershed groups on different initiatives, different areas to kind of from a case-by-case basis and where it makes sense to. And then it's also a bit of land ownership as well, trying to engage with landowners up the watershed to increase planting there, to increase awareness so people aren't cutting down, mowing right to the stream, as effects up the watershed are you're gonna see those down, a cascading effect down as the water travels downstream to different ponds. So there's more of a holistic approach as well there.
So my last question is I noticed the salinity in this. You can look at Governor's Pond and see how high it is. Is that because it's the salt water that goes in there compared to some of these other ones?
Yeah, I
Is
think
that what makes that so high, or is that higher than normal?
I think it's safe to say that's the kind of tidal influence there. It is right next to the harbor, and when you get high tide, there's going to be some backflow of water there, I suspect, through the culverts. So
Okay.
that's probably the main culprit of salinity there.
Thank you, Alistair. Trevor, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Alistair, for your report. I'm going to touch on your salinity question there. There's 3 ponds, Upper Slicks, Lower Slicks, and Agriculture Pond, which are basically non-tidal whatsoever, but the salinity levels they're up there around the 20-25%. Is there any explanation for that?
So that could be relating more to the salt used on the roads. The slick ponds were built as retention ponds, so they're not quite natural. They're more naturalized, and the intent is to capture a lot of the runoff to slow it down. That's coming from the more of the industrial park in the northern section of the city. So it may be linked mainly to the road salt, but there could also be other factors as well. Sometimes it can be a bit hard to pinpoint one source of those that causes a high level of something, but we'd have to maybe look more into that. But
And hardness, can you explain what that means? I don't understand hardness.
yeah, so hardness it's the measure of, I believe it's things like calcium, magnesium, the alkali earth metals, I believe it is, one of the metals on the periodic table, one of the columns. So it's the higher, the hardness doesn't necessarily have an effect so much on aquatic life. It's more used in, like for our water, having a higher hardness would affect how easy it is to, you see it in when you're showering or build calcification in your kettle. It's just a buildup of that magnesium and calcium, things like that.
Okay, thanks, Alistair.
Councillor Drawn, you good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alistair. That's good information.
Thank you,
Good
Mr. Chair.
that somebody's starting to look at these ponds around the city. I think they've been neglected for a long time, so hopefully that the health can continue to improve. So, thank you. If it's all right, we're going to jump to Katrina here for the climate vulnerability and risk assessment results. Okay.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a continuation of the work that we've been doing towards the climate action plan. We put in a lot of work at one point with the climate adaptation working group to compose climate impact statements. So basically taking the climate projections report, which has been presented here in the past, and really nailing down into what the impacts of the climatic changes will be. And so then those impact statements have now been taken through a vulnerability and risk assessment framework. And the purpose of that was really to prioritize between those impacts and really understand which we're most at risk from and which we're most vulnerable to. So from that, we resulted in 21 priority impacts, which are in the kind of graphic attached. They relate to extreme weather, precipitation, temperature, and sea level rise, and then the resulting impact of that. So, for example, an increased demand for emergency shelters and services, like cooling and warming centers, leading to an increased strain on emergency planning and resources, or an increased frequency of wildfires, leading to altered landscapes, destruction of forests and wildlife habitats, damage to and loss of tree cover, and many others. Sorry. So now we'll take the priority impacts that were determined through that process, and we'll move them into the next phase of work on the climate action plan. So we actually have a workshop happening tomorrow with the climate adaptation and mitigation working groups. And a portion of that will be looking at those prioritized impact statements and really coming up with actions that can be done to address those impacts.
Okay. And you have a meeting tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so that's what the meeting tomorrow with the there's two meetings tomorrow, actually. There's the working group meeting that's happening in the morning. It's like a closed meeting, and we'll be looking at those impacts as part of it to come up with actions related to them, kind of like a long list of actions. And then in the evening, there'll be a public session, and they'll be presented with the same infographic, but we'll take a slightly different tactic to collect their input.
Okay, perfect. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Drawn?
No, I'm good, thank you, Terry.
Okay. I just have one, and I just wanted to notice a statement here, but the increased algae blooms, the decreased water quality. It kind of ties into what Alistair was talking about. So is there any examples of that right now?
Ooh, I will probably turn that over to my colleagues who work more in that realm.
Okay.
Jessica or Alistair, any thoughts there?
Yeah, Are you looking for examples of existing algal
Well, I
algae
just,
blooms in the
I
city?
just wondered, yeah, because I guess the concern is the algae blooms will grow, and then it takes the oxygen out of the water, and then, of course, the fish never die. So are any of our ponds or anything close to that, or is there a concern about that right now?
I'm not sure if we monitored that, did we, Alistair?
There's been some like concern from residents in previous years with one of the, I think it was Andrews Pond South, where there was a algae buildup, but some of it kind of just happens with the summer when temperatures rise. Some of the more harmful algae blooms do require a bit more of it could be a point source of pollution, like the one that was in the news recently where there was a fish kill. I'm not sure if they have pinpointed the source of that yet, but it's something that the parameters through the pond study would indicate. If there's higher levels of, say, nitrates or phosphates, that might indicate that there's something coming from agriculture or another source upstream. But we haven't seen any levels that might indicate a concern yet. This year, it is something as we get the results from the college, some of them do have to go to the PEI analytical lab. So we do, as they come in, we do look at them and see if there's anything that might raise any alarms. And
Okay. So just so I'm clear, Alistair, so like during the summer months, when it starts to get hot, do we do any of the water testing, or do we leave that to the watershed groups to do the water testing?
so the testing is done by the watershed groups. We provide funding for the ecological pond study, so to cover some of the costs of equipment, of the testing that has to go to the provincial lab. But we don't have staff that are going out. The equipment is the colleges, and with them and the watershed groups, their summer staff and coordinators are responsible for that monitoring.
Okay. So we obviously get updates from the watershed groups and what conditions they're in.
Yeah, so we have a shared drive where the results get updated to, and we're looking at them. And if someone notices something as they come in, they'll send an email to us, and we'll discuss that.
I guess at the end of the day, what I'm getting to is, I think this is great, and I think the data is great, and I think working with the partnership with the watersheds is great. But if there's a problem occurring in the ponds that we see it, I don't know if we have a roadmap of how we're going to fix it. The watershed group could say salinity is really high, or the algae is growing, but we don't have any money to fix it. So that's the only thing I'm kind of wondering is, all this is great, having the data great, is there a marriage between us and the watershed group? And if there's something that needs to be done, do they have a valve to be able to say, this is what needs to be done, this is the cost, can the city of Charlotte help us?
Yeah, so we do provide both the watershed groups with a grant to help them with their field work. There's been a larger partnership over the last couple of years after the Fiona and the more larger need for tree planting, and there's been a lot more work directly with our staff and theirs. For a long time, neither watershed groups had a staff. It was largely volunteer driven, but now they are growing, and there is a full-time coordinator with Ellens Creek, and Simon and I both work closely with her. I know Wrights Creek has also developed a kind of vision, a plan for their watershed, which I don't believe they're quite ready to present yet, but we did offer for them to bring it to this committee should they wish to, and we hope that they will eventually get to a place where they're comfortable sharing that with us or the Parks and Rec Committee for what they see as their long-term vision for their watershed, from renaturalizing to also the recreational, the trails, the other spaces that could be created within that
No,
network.
that's good, Alice. As long as they know that there's an outlet, they could at least ask, and we know what the situation is and what the shape of the ponds and so. No, that's good. Thank you. Councillor Duran, any other questions or any questions on that?
No, I'm great, thank you.
Okay. Councillor McKinnon? Okay. Okay. QR code recommendation. Anna?
Okie dokie.
So this is a report that came to our desk via Emily McLeod with Human Resources as the staff member supporting the EDI Advisory Committee. So it was a suggestion from that committee, a recommendation from that committee that the city implement a multilingual QR code system at transit stops throughout the municipality to enable anybody who's using the transit system to scan the code and then access information in the language of their choice. This is a report just for information for council. So there are a number of different ways that multilingual inclusion can show up in transit. First of all, I'll name that our operator has recently updated the technology systems, and the municipalities are paying for that, so that what's called the GTFS feed, the General Transit Feed specification, sort of uploaded into the cloud. It shows the schedules for all buses and their live location. And then different apps, for example, Google Maps or Transit app, can pull that information and represent it on their app. So already right now, anyone with a smartphone who uses Google Maps in the language of their choice can access route planning information in the language of their choice. And likewise, if there are any other apps in any language that are accessing general transit information, that's already available in the language of their choice. Other ways that we can include multilingual design is just to include fewer words at bus stops, use iconography instead of language, use maps and numbers and schedules so that you're designing for an interlingual audience without requiring descriptions. But this suggestion we'll definitely take on board so that we could look at providing in future a multilingual website. Currently, it's only available in English. It's also possible to have machine translations run on the website. But this summer, in July and August, with some of the summer staff that we have doing tree planting, they're unable to do tree planting during the hottest part of the year. So they're going to be coming across and helping us do an inventory of all of our bus stops, which will help us to be able to prioritize bus stop locations and where infrastructure updates are required. And following July and August, once we have that data and information, we're hoping to create a sort of set of design standards with our neighbouring municipalities and hopefully the province as well, for what a standard shelter, bus platform, benches, poles, signage could look like. And we can certainly take this recommendation from the EDI committee into that process.
Okay. So at the end of the day, it sounds like it's going to be much easier for people to use the transit system, to understand it, understand where the routes are, could be in their language.
Yes, that is the direction that we want to be going in. It is a process where sort of catching up, and I think we're perhaps needing to do a number of upgrades in the way that the system is communicated to the public, and there are some recommendations in the 10-year transit strategy around standardizing signage and making the information more accessible. One of the biggest barriers that we have right now is that if you go to the T3 Transit website and you try to read the schedules, you'll see that they're not presented in a searchable format. It's a screenshot of a spreadsheet, and the text is very, very small. So that's one of the pieces of feedback that we've received from older people and people with vision impairments, is that it's just very physically hard to read the information. So that is something that we're aware of, and we're wanting to work with our transit operator to improve in sort of next 1 year, 2 year timeline.
Okay. Yeah. All right. No, perfect. I wonder, and this is not just for our department to be allowed them, and maybe Eleanor, you might answer this. Is there any talk of us moving towards AI? Starting to kind of. We have some work to do there. Yeah, oh, no, I know there's a lot. That's why I wondered if we're even looking at it, because. Not quite yet. Because Kelowna is on it, and they gave some presentations in Calgary. And it's, I know one of the examples was the building permits. That would, sometimes it can take a couple months where they're down to 24 hours. Once you get all the AI, your data platform in place. So is it something we're starting to look at? Okay, all right, no, perfect. So I think that would help when you talk about doing all the bus stops and how many are, where are they, so on. Okay, no, thank you, Anna. Any questions, Councillor Drawn, on Anna's presentation there?
No, thank you very much.
Councillor McKinnon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, not a question. I guess more just a comment that kind of excited to see that there's going to be a study put in place this summer for the stops and signage, shelters, because I get a lot of complaints on the north end that the stops, that the sign is over on a telephone pole. You have to go through a ditch to be able to see it. There's accessibility to that, so it's just good to see something's being done. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very aware of that problem of signs on telephone poles. So what we're doing, unfortunately, we can't say that we're installing new bus stops this summer. We're doing an inventory of all of the bus stops so that we can prioritize capital investments in future years. So that, we can get to the point of having fully accessible stops, and especially on roads like North River Road, where there's 2 quite fast lanes of traffic, making sure that every bus stop is paired with a pedestrian crossing with a median island, for example, so that people, particularly young kids and seniors or people with disabilities who are, by and large, the main users of the system, so they're not having to dash across 2 lanes of traffic to get to their stop.
Great, thank you.
So pairing every bus stop, we would like to. We're not planning on, this is the vision rather than a concrete plan for implementation. So pairing every bus stop with a pedestrian crossing.
Yes,
At
okay,
least,
okay.
on some.
I misheard you. Yep.
Yeah, and so usually, and we have to make sure that the pedestrian crossings are appropriately located behind
Yeah,
the bus
yeah.
and not in front of it so that we're not creating additional safety hazards.
Perfect, yeah, thanks. No more questions on that. Thank you, Anna. Next one, we'll go with Nick with the electric vehicle charging update. And Nick, when I was reading through it, I was I know it said that you're looking for an increase, but it looks like some of them were decreasing too.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so part of this report is to kind of talk about the current fees that we're charging for our city-owned locations and a recommendation to lower the fees. And I'll get to that in a minute. The first part is just
So
to
it was to lower, because in here it talks about to increase the usage. Oh, okay, so you want to lower the price to increase the charge of usage. Okay,
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, okay.
Yep. So first, I'm just going to give a summary on the current state of electric vehicles in the city, or electric vehicle chargers in the city.
Yeah.
So based on information from commonly used electric vehicle mapping websites, PlugShare and ChargeHub, there is about 59 electric vehicle charging stations in the city. Most of those stations have multiple ports that people can plug into. So based on that, the number is more like 154 ports. So that means 154 electric vehicles could simultaneously be charging in the city all at once. 90% of the ports are level 2 chargers. 3% are level 3. So level 2 just means it takes a few hours to charge your vehicle. Level 3 are the fast chargers that can charge for 30 minutes up to an hour kind of thing. 7% are Tesla superchargers, so those are a little bit more vehicle specific, although there are certain vehicles that can get an adapter and plug into those. So those will be eventually available to more and more vehicles. About 36% of these chargers are located in hotels and car dealerships, so a little less accessible to the public maybe. Some locations might require you to be, let's say, a client of the hotel to be using the charger, or possibly they charge a little bit extra if you aren't. So some are a little bit questionable about whether they're fully available to the public or not.
Okay.
So of those chargers, there's 10 locations that the city of Charlottetown own, and that equates to 19 charge ports. So they're located at some common areas like community centers, a few downtown locations, and the one located in front of the library has been by far the most popular and widely used charger that we
And how
own.
many's in front of the library? Two?
There's the one station, but it has two charge ports on it, yeah.
Okay.
The figure one here kind of shows those 10 locations, and it shows the number of sessions that have occurred, and so that anytime somebody plugs into their vehicle, they count that as a session. So that could be a 5-minute charge, that could be many hours that somebody's charged. So that's how many vehicles basically have pulled up and plugged in since they've been installed in 2021.
Okay.
So you can see there that the library is the highest, and the downtown locations tend to be the higher ones. The community centers, the arenas, and the parkades are quite low. They don't get a whole lot of usage.
At the parkades?
Yeah, the parkades, so Fitzroy and Pownell both have charge stations located in them.
That surprises me.
Yeah, and they're quite low. So also on that chart, the table there, you can see the duration that the people have charged for. So it doesn't necessarily line up with the amount of sessions, but it's quite similar to how many sessions have occurred there. So currently, the cost to charge at our stations is $3 an hour, with the ones downtown in front of the library and next to City Hall here and on Great George Street. Those ones bump up to $4 an hour, just basically during the day on weekdays, business hours on weekdays, and then back to $3 an hour in the evenings and weekends. And the revenue that we get from all these stations is about $15,400 per year, and the cost of the electricity is about $10,700 a year. So there's a net revenue from these stations currently. Then the problem with the $3 an hour though is that most charging stations in the city are more like $2 an hour. So it does come off as being a little bit more expensive, but the chargers downtown have replaced a metered parking space, or the ones that bump up to $4 an hour. Those have replaced metered spaces. So the $3 an hour kind of compensates the $1.50 an hour charge for parking, plus the $1.50 an hour of electricity that typically gets used.
Right.
So the proposal is to kind of use that $3 an hour as the basis for the ones that replace a metered parking space. But any that are replacing just in a parking lot of the arena or at the community centers, they don't need to be that high. You weren't paying for parking in those spaces to begin with, so you really kind of want to just more cover the electricity cost at that point, and any other fees the charge point kind of charges us to use their system and all that stuff. So. So I have a table of three kind of situations. So we have ones that have replaced metered spots, some that are four that are in unmetered parking lots of community centers, and then the three parking locations. So the two parkades and then the CADC parking lot on the waterfront. So there's kind of three different situations with each of those. The first being the metered spots. They bump up, they're $3 an hour, but bump up to $4 an hour during the day. The recommendation is to just charge $3 an hour for the first 2 hours and then bump up to $4 an hour after that. That just, prevents people from just sitting there charging all day long and taking up the space when they could be hopping in, hopping out, and getting more people in there charging their vehicles. And then in the evenings and weekends when there wouldn't normally be a parking fee, it would drop down to $2 an hour for the first hour, and then up to $4 an hour after that. So then the next situation is the unmetered parking spots. So the recommendation there is to just charge $1 an hour for the first hour, just as sort of an incentive to go use the facilities, go use the community centers and the arenas, park there for fairly inexpensive first hour, and then up to $2 an hour after that to fully cover the electricity cost there. It would help promote those chargers being used a little bit more. And then in the parking facilities, currently you need to pay to park there. And then currently it's a $3 an hour charge. So you're almost paying double the parking fee at those places. So that's my thought for why those don't get used a whole lot, is that it adds, so much more cost to your parking fee at that location. So it would again be just $2 an hour for the first 3 hours, which covers the electricity cost for us, and then $4 an hour afterwards, so that again more people can be using it and get more vehicles in there.
So it would be what, Nick? Say that again? It would be $2 an hour?
For the first 3 hours, and then $4 after that.
Okay. So that's not on your chart here, though.
It might have skipped over to the next page.
No, I have, what I have is $2 an hour for the first 2 hours, and $4 an hour thereafter.
So that's for the metered spots downtown. And so then it should be the third, there's metered spots, unmetered spots, and parking facilities on that table, on the left side of that table.
That's what I have here.
Yeah. So it's kind of the third row down. Yeah, that one there.
$2 an hour for the first 3 hours?
Yeah.
So the park, okay. So that's just a CADC parking lot?
And plus Pownell Parkade and Fitzroy, it's skipped over to the next page.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah. Okay.
So, and so that would be the same if we were to add in the future Queen Street Parkade. It would be under that same price schedule kind of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, the reason for these changes, it is a decrease in price. So it would be a bit of a decrease in the gross revenue that we receive, and a slight increase in the electricity usage. But the way that the cost is set, it would still be a net profit for the city.
So, Nick, is there much upkeep or much maintenance to the chargers?
Not necessarily. They are kind of joint owned with Maritime Electric. These ones are. They do all that maintenance to them. We provided some of the funding to install them, so they kind of take care of them mostly.
Okay, so there's not an extra charge there. They got to go out and fix them, so to speak, or maintain them.
There hasn't been so far, as far as I'm.
And so each of the charging stations, the prices would be posted, I assume?
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the recommendations that will happen, is that to post on the systems themselves the updated price, either on the screen if that can be done, or just a little sign that says that. Plus, we'll be working with communications to let residents know that these prices have changed. A lot of the like PlugShare and some other places, you can add comments when you plug into a location. So, and a lot of the comments for our stations tend to be, quite pricey. That's sort of the general point that a lot of people are trying to make, is that it's cheaper to park at one of the other locations. It's always going to be a little bit more expensive because it's going to be $3 an hour rather than $2 an hour. But a lot of the other locations are just in parking lots where they're not charging for parking.
Okay. Now, and I think if, we can do a communications piece, but I think people get confused. They go to one charger and they get a certain price, and they go to another charger and it's a parking area and there's another. I just think if we could post them at each charging station, what the cost is, it'd be good. But no, this makes a lot of sense to me. Councillor Drawn, Councillor McKinnon, any questions?
No, I agree with that. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, there's also just a section in the report on potential locations for the future. So the downtown chargers have been the most widely used, so that's kind of the location in the city that we'd like to focus on for future chargers. So either more road, street side chargers downtown, and/or a charger in Victoria Park. Probably in the ball field would be the easiest, kind of less impact on traffic, and it'd be taking up space. If another location would be in front of the Kiwanis Dairy Bar, but there's limited parking there. So the recommendation would be in the ballpark parking lot at Victoria Park. So we have budget for installing chargers in the city, so those will be some locations we look at for those.
So would they be level 2 chargers or level 3?
Level 2 chargers, yeah.
And there's a big price jump between 2 and 3, is there?
Yeah, that's correct. For level 2, they're in the range of $10,000 for $10,000 to $20,000 to install a system, depending on if it has multiple charge ports. Level 3 chargers are more in the range of $100,000, $150,000. So
Okay.
quite an investment there just for, and those kind of chargers have slightly different usage. You're looking to get in and get out, quick charge, almost like a gas station, rather than sit there and go and enjoy the park or go downtown and do some shopping. That's what a level 2 charger is kind of meant for, longer stays.
And the Tesla chargers that were in your report, we don't own them.
No, those are located out at on the Causeway.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure who owns them. It must be a local business there, or it might be just Tesla itself that owns them.
Okay. All right, perfect. Yep, go ahead.
To return to work, but is there any votes that is needed for the last report?
Any what?
Any votes or motions needed for the last report?
The capital area 10-year public transit plan?
There is.
We'll probably leave that till the next meeting. It's 1 o'clock. Is that, just 1 second here.
It's the last one. If you want to run through it.
Does anyone get it on the agenda? That'd be great. Wanting to bring that one forward for the last couple months.
How long will it take to present it, roughly?
Depends how much you guys want to talk about it.
I can be as brief as possible.
Yeah, for me, when I read through it, I think you could present it, and I think it should be sent out to all council. I'm not prepared to send it to council for a vote yet. So
Say that again.
if Anna wants to go over it today, that's fine. I would prefer this goes to council for review before we recommend to go to council. Because I never met with, as I said, I was going to last month, but I've been away for the last month. But I never met with Cassidy's, that group, so I want to meet with them and get some feedback from them before we make a recommendation to move ahead with this 10-year public transit plan. So we can either go over it today or we can leave it till next month.
Can Richard comment on the process? If we talked about it today, it would go automatically to council and put it.
No, it doesn't have to.
Defer it.
Yeah.
Defer it from today. Talk about it today, but then defer the resolution from at the committee level. So we would come back to committee.
Yeah. But I mean, Trevor, you got to go?
Yeah, I gotta do
Okay.
I could also, if I may, 2 months ago, we presented this at a special
Yeah.
meeting of council, and I think transit is one of those issues that while I sit within the environment and sustainability team, it does intersect with lots of different areas, and so should the chair and CAO wish to consider bringing it to a special council meeting, that's
Oh,
also
yeah,
another
we
option.
could. I just need to get my head around what the issues are, if there's just any issues, and what the public is saying. And then iron them out before I send this to council, and the council has a ton of questions, and we don't have the answers for it. So I just want to, for me, that's why I say we can do the presentation today, but I'm not prepared to send it to council for a vote yet. So, but I suggest 1 o'clock, and Trevor's going to go, we might as well leave it till the next meeting. You okay with that, Bob?
Yeah, that'd be perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll leave it till next meeting.
Needs a resolution on the charter fee adjustment.
Oh, that's right. It's never hard when you want to reduce the fees, Dick. So, do I have a mover and a seconder for that, to send that out to council, to reduce the fees of the charging stations?
Sure,
Reduce the
I
fees,
will.
I'll motion that. Yep.
Okay, moved by Councilor McKinnon, second by Councilor Duran. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor
Awesome.
McKinnon, second by Councilor Duran.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.